All right, here we go. The Fox News alert you've been waiting for. The House plans to vote. This isn't a repeat from last year, to impeach the president for a second time.
Probably by tonight. This after Vice President Mike Pence has rejected the House's call to invoke the 25th Amendment, and that sends the impeachment wheels into motion. Ainsley.
And Griff Jenkins is live down in Washington as lawmakers on both sides of the aisle now say that they will support impeachment. Griff?
Ainsley, Brian, and Steve, good morning. Buckle up. It's going to be a busy day. And after the effort to get Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment failed, Speaker Pelosi will now plow forward with voting to impeach President for the second time in 13 months. Watch.
The president's actions demonstrate his absolute inability to discharge the most basic and fundamental powers and duties of his office. Therefore, the president must be removed from office immediately.
And she's named her 9 impeachment managers. The list you see here includes Trump critics like Ted Lieu and Jamie Raskin and Eric Swalwell, who is under pressure to step down because of his president is cracking. At least 5 Republicans you see here say they will vote to impeach. Most notable among this list, Liz Cheney, the House Conference chair, who says the president betrayed his oath to the Constitution. But other Republicans, like newly elected Nancy Mace, feels this is being rushed. Fox has told Majority Leader Mitch McConnell believes President Trump committed impeachable offenses, but he has not decided whether he would actually vote to impeach. McConnell has also indicated a Senate trial so far isn't likely to occur until President Trump has left office. Brian, Ainsley, Steve?
All right. Thanks so much, Griff. So what does it mean? As you mentioned, there were at least 5 Republicans. Unlike the first time they tried impeachment, they go along with it. They got none last time. On the Senate side, Romney, Sass.
That's 5 so far. There could be up to 24.
So on the Senate side, Romney, Sass, and Murkowski, you are virtually locked in not to vote for it. I think the biggest story is Mitch McConnell. The Axios is reporting, the New York Times broke in, and it's not been denied that he's 50-50 on voting for impeachment if he gets the opportunity to do it. They come back in session on the 19th. The 20th is the inauguration. The question is, does it help the country at all to impeach a guy that's at Mar-a-Lago? We know the horrific acts of last week were precipitated or preceded by the speech. We get it. But that was a typical Trump speech. He could be in 5 degrees in the middle of Wisconsin or in 80 degrees in the middle of Miami. That's what he does. He fires people up. He gets them going. He wants them to go to the voting booth. This time he said, go down and go to the Capitol and be heard. But he said peacefully. We can debate that. What I just said? Debate that, not rocket it through. Do we have a president that's going to put troops into a country and is going to upset the other party and they're going to say, quickly, let's impeach him or her? Are we going to have a situation where they're going to maybe a president that's going to decide that every illegal is going to be a citizen and that the Republican majority in the House is going to be upset by that? Are we going to quickly do a rocket impeachment? This is a terrible precedent. Molly Hemingway weighed in last night.
This summer, you had millions of people losing their jobs, having their cities rampaged, cops being dragged through the streets, businesses being burned, homes being burned, people being killed. And, you had Democrats not really saying anything for month after month after month until people saw that the polls showed that people weren't supportive of these riots. And only when it escalates to the Capitol do people in Congress finally start taking this situation seriously. They need to care more about the people and the country and less about the fact that they very much have political opponents they would like to dispose of.
And I just wonder how many Republicans are saying, well, I want to run in 2024. This is my chance to make sure that Trump won't, even though no one will ever say that was a good move to give that speech, to say march to the Capitol, and to act so slowly when this whole thing was unfolding.
Listen, in addition to the fact that Mitch McConnell is, it sounds like it's better than 50. It's around 50-50 which way he's going to go. I think we kind of know, though. I mean, his wife resigned herself from the cabinet. He feels that the reason he will no longer be Senate Majority Leader is because Donald Trump lost the Senate race down in Georgia. He completely blames the President of the United States. And he says, essentially, according to people close to Mitch McConnell, he sees this as a fight for his legacy, defending the Senate against the verbal assaults from the president and the literal attack of his followers last week. And it was the president who did egg them on last week. There is no doubt about it. Then you've got the House, you've got Kevin McCarthy. Apparently, he called Steny Hoyer and said, hey, rather than impeachment, how about censure? I can give you a lot of Republicans who would sign on to censure. And he said, apparently, Steny Hoyer did, Nancy Pelosi's not going to go along with that. He has also been asking various members of the House on the Republican side, should I call the president and tell him to quit? Because the problem right now is politically, as Brit Hume observes, Donald Trump essentially has got a lot of problems with his future. Watch.
Trump is obviously at this point radioactive, not just among liberals and Democrats, where he's always been absolutely loathed, but now to a great extent among everyday Republicans. I don't think there's any doubt he retains his hardest of hardcore base. They will be with him forever, I'm sure. But I mean, the rest of the Republican Party, they're looking at this and they're saying, what we don't want is this guy hanging around in 2 or 4 years, in 2 years during the congressional elections, and worst of all, running for president again after that. Because, you know, he'll pull off a segment of the Republican vote, make it unavailable to ordinary Republicans, regular Republicans, and be a curse on them.
And that is why today's vote will be so interesting to see how it shakes out. The White House is expecting, according to the Washington Post, at least a dozen House members on the Republican side. And another big major newspaper, Ainsley, says it could be 24 Republicans say, yep, we need to go ahead and impeach our president in our party.
And could be some additional senators as well as the week continues to unfold. Karl Rove was asked, why do you think that Mitch McConnell would support this? And he said there's several reasons. Maybe he believes that this is inevitable. He's going to be impeached. Or it could be that he's just had enough after the president was charging the stolen election, after the Capitol riot. But he says, Karl Rove goes on to say, even if he's not impeached, this does make it easier, a path easier for the party to move beyond Donald Trump. Right. To your point, Brian, it's going to be interesting to see over the next 4 years who is going to step up. If they want new blood, so to speak, in the Republican Party, who is it that will come forward and run for president?
But if Mitch McConnell is such a great politician, does he understand that even as Brit Hume said, no one doubts, and Jonathan Swan reported, there's no sign the president has lost his base. So if you actually want to build on the president's base and bring the party in a subtle or dramatic new direction, why do it without them? With only days left, it makes no sense. Kevin McCarthy's idea of censure is the perfect it's the perfect thing to bring up now, because Republicans could say, I can't back that up. I almost died. Mike Pence that was almost hanged. You could say, we were physically in danger because of security, and at the same time send a message and then let the president go next Tuesday or Wednesday and then move on. Right. Why fracture unnecessarily?
Because, Brian, you're talking about people who work in the Congress. And we're talking about the Congress was under attack last week. It was looted. There was a riot.
So was Portland every day, and nobody cared on the left.
Brian,
those people have lives too, just because they don't have medallions to go through metal detectors every day. All the state houses and the police houses that were ransacked and nobody cared.
I don't think what they were doing in Portland was trying to overthrow the democracy. The democracy of the United States of America. Brian, I get it. And there is some equivalency when you look at the fact that they were both attacks and they're both protests. Right. But this was essentially, and some people have used, the people on the political left say the president incited this. The president is the one who said, come to Washington, let's have this big thing. It's going to be wild. And it was wild. Mitch McConnell and also Kevin McCarthy are trying to figure out how to punish him, because they say he has gone too far.
Right. Well, as we went over.
Well, and Mike Pence was talking about, hey, I'm not going to invoke the 25th Amendment, but he wrote a letter to Nancy Pelosi using her own words, saying you implemented this commission, this 25th Amendment commission, back at the end of 2020, a few months ago, and I'm using your exact words. You used this. You said this was only for medical reasons. Could you remove a president? And he said, so I'm not. But then
because it's never been done.
And he also read some scripture that was beautiful. He said the Bible says that for everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to heal and a time to build up. And the time is now. He goes on to say, so help me God. So I think the country does need healing. The Republican Party is going to have to find a way to make the Trump loyalists happy, and also those who might not vote for him now, if the election were today, how they're going to come together as a party. All right, now to another Fox News alert. The world's largest video platform is suspending the president.
Expected. YouTube, there you go, says, quote, after review and in light of concerns about its ongoing potential for violence, we removed new content uploaded to Donald J. Trump's channel for violating our policy. It is now has its first strike and is temporarily prevented from uploading new content for a minimum of 7 days. Owned by Google.
YouTube now standards. When you look at what they did to Parler, they pulled the plug. They all colluded. They got together, the mega monster monopoly from Silicon Valley, and they pulled the plug on Parler. Today, in the pages of the New York Post, David Marcus of the Federalist takes a look at how uneven it really is, and how, wait a minute, things were said on Parler, but have you looked at what is being said on Twitter? A hashtag on Twitter right now is Kill Trump. There had been arrests.
With a smiley face.
Yeah. Someone take this clown out now. That tweet is still up. And he summarizes it this way. What is really happening, and it's a great observation, what is really happening here is that Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey is cynically taking advantage of the tragic and chaotic events of the Capitol to secure his company dominance. It is deeply un-American, and it deserves to be called out. Twitter has the right to police speech on its platform, but they must apply the rules equally to everyone if it claims to be a neutral platform and not a publisher. But unfortunately, right now, Ainsley and Brian, it is not a neutral platform.
Well, what happened on YouTube is these civil rights groups, they threatened a national boycott if YouTube did not remove the channel. So they have removed the channel. They say they're going to do that for at least the next week. It could go on longer than that. It could go on indefinitely. But they just want the next week to be violence-free, and they are scared that the president would incite violence. So that's why they're saying they did this. Glenn Greenwald, he's a journalist, and he blasts big tech. Listen to this.
Facebook, too, has committees now, the way a government would have committees, studying what is true and what is false, what kind of speech is dangerous, what kind of speech isn't dangerous. And that's why the amazing thing is that in the wake of Twitter and Facebook's ban of President Trump, you had numerous democracies around the world who have no love lost for Donald Trump. Quite the contrary. Chancellor Angela Merkel in Germany, the president of Mexico, French ministers who came out and said this is extremely dangerous, that Silicon Valley is anointing itself the world media that controls and is more powerful than other democracies because they know that's coming for their democracies as well.
The president posted a video on YouTube, and it was talking about how impeachment would be very dangerous for the United States of America, and YouTube took it down.
Yeah, you know, Joe Biden, I think up until about a year ago, saw this as a huge problem. He changed gears a little bit. And, of course, when they're hurting conservatives and corporate America decided to stay away from conservatives that protested the Electoral College conclusions last Wednesday, now you have the Twitter and all the major social media pages punishing conservatives. Just to know, too, out of nowhere, Facebook has decided to take down Iran's Facebook page. Facebook also started labeling Press TV, Russia's Sputnik, Press TV, China's news agency. So they are trying to, I guess, get everything in line. In Uganda, as was outlined ridiculously, the ridiculousness was outlined last night on Tucker. They are watching that election closely. Big tech firms are watching that election closely. And I'll just close with this. When you say it was so disturbing that the President of the United States was contesting the 2020 election, and how dare he do that, this tweet has reemerged. Nancy Pelosi, May 16th, 2017. Our election was hijacked. There is no question. Congress has a duty to hashtag protect our democracy and hashtag follow the facts. That seems so dangerous today, doesn't it? Because if Donald Trump did that, his account would be taken down. It certainly would be frozen. It's amazing how quick we have changed when it comes to social media, depending on who says it.
Exactly, because every time there is a crackdown, it always seems to crack down on one side. Anyway, it is a very, very busy Wednesday. We've got lots of other headlines, and for that, we go to Jillian, who's up on the mezzanine level.
And that's right. Good morning. And let's begin with a Fox News alert. At least 20.
Our top story on this Wednesday, there from Capitol Hill, the House of Representatives is going to push to impeach the President of the United States. The vote probably tonight. So far, at least 5 House Republicans have announced that they will vote for impeachment. The White House does expect that number to at least double. As sources tell Fox News that Mitch McConnell is furious with the president, but it's unclear if he would actually vote to impeach. Right now, according to Axios, it's 50-50 whether Mitch will do just that. Fox News contributor Charlie Hurt is here to react. Charlie, what happened a week ago today, just about as bad as anything I've ever seen in Washington, and I'm an old guy. There are people on both sides of the aisle who feel the president needs to be held accountable, but they're trying to figure out, if you're a Republican, how far do I go out there? Because I still want to be a politician, and I don't want Donald Trump to come after me someday.
Sure. No, this is all pure, raw, brutal politics. And Democrats are doing this because they can, and they have all the levers of power right now, and they can get away with it. And it's a big win for them. And in a weird way, you know, once President Trump is out of the White House, Democrats are going to have one less thing to bang the drum about. So they want to bang that thing as much as they can in the last 6 days, because for them, you know, they feel like being able to complain about Trump and fight with Trump has been very, you know, good for their politics. On the Republican side, it's a little bit more difficult. They're in a situation right now where, and it's a tricky line that they're walking, because on the one hand, a lot of them want to, as you point out, condemn Trump for his style. Right. But the problem is President Trump brought millions of new voters to the table.
100%.
He also brought some issues that they had ignored for years. And if Republicans try to dump all the blame on Trump and not stop and think about what they have done to bring us to the current situation politically, then Republicans are never going to get out of the wilderness if they don't figure that stuff out.
Well, you know, for the tens of millions of people who voted for Donald Trump, they are confused because of what they have seen in the last week. Because had that rally not happened, had he not summoned those tens of thousands of people to Washington, D.C., and had there not been the looting and the rioting at the Capitol, we wouldn't be talking about how Donald Trump's going to be impeached tonight. We would just be talking about, you know, he continues to say that the election was stolen and the whole system was rigged, and it is what it is. But here we are.
But I think that, you know, I think it's possible to overstate the degree to which President Trump is to blame for all of this. If you know, people that say that he incited the riot, I just always ask them the same thing. Show me the line in his speech where he incited that riot. And they can't point to a line. They can pick words here and there. They can talk about the way he talks about things. But, you know, the fact that he was challenging the election and we were having a political debate, a very boisterous, typically Trump political debate about the unfairness of the election, that's not the same as a riot. That's not the same as inciting a riot. That's called public discourse, a public debate. And Trump has always been very boisterous about all of this. And that's good. And when people, and you know, we saw this as soon as Congress came back in session, you had Democrats accusing Republicans of treason because they were challenging the election results. No, that's not treason. That's called debate. That's what this is all about. And the reason we have debate is so that we don't have riots and fistfights. Right. And so I think people are getting a little carried away with this business of blaming Trump for inciting this thing. I just don't see it.
Okay. Before you go, one of the impeachment managers is going to be Eric Swalwell, who got caught up a couple of weeks ago in that Chinese spy thing. And now Nancy Pelosi has said, you know what, forget about that. I put you on the House Intel Committee. Now you're an impeachment manager. Congratulations.
Yeah. Eric Swalwell, who will fall for anything, because the first impeachment was such a shining moment for him.
Worked out great.
Nobody pushed the first impeachment and all of the debunked conspiracy theories that led up to the first impeachment more than Eric Swalwell. And to me, it all reveals the fundamental unseriousness that Nancy Pelosi and Democrats in Congress are about actually governing and actually addressing all the important issues that drove all of those supporters, those millions of supporters that you mentioned a minute ago, over to Trump in the first place.
Well, let's see what happens. It's going to happen tonight. It looks like the vote this evening. You'll see it right here on Fox. As you just saw, Charlie Hurt. Charlie, thank you very much for joining us from the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thanks, Steve. Good to see you.
You bet. All right. Meanwhile, moving out to the West Coast.
Pediatrics has said that children are not to blame for the spread of the virus. So let's bring in Fox News medical contributor Dr. Nicole Saphier. Good morning to you, Dr. Saphier.
Good morning, Ainsley.
Good morning. Do you recommend this? Good idea or bad idea?
Well, Ainsley, I think that this comment was far too premature. Albert Einstein says you learn from the past, you live for today, and you hope for tomorrow, but you never stop questioning. Bottom line, comments like this saying that children are going to require vaccinations for a virus that we still don't know a lot about is really promotes or just invokes more panic. And the truth is, Ainsley, the data tells us right now that we are not seeing SARS-CoV-2 spreading throughout the school communities. As long as community spread is down, children are safe to do in-person learning. We know that the infection fatality rate for children is far lower than that of adults. And the superintendent also compared COVID-19 to measles and the flu, saying it'll be no different than some of these other vaccines where we require them for children to be in school. But the truth is, Ainsley, the infection fatality rate for children for SARS-CoV-2 is far lower than that of measles and that of flu. And also, Pfizer and Moderna haven't actually tested their vaccine in children yet. Pfizer is currently looking at children aged 12 to 16, but Pfizer and Moderna both say that they're not going to have data on young children probably towards the end of 2022. So statements like this are far too premature and really is only going to invoke fear and panic. And we don't need that right now. We need to continue doing everything we can to get our children in school as safely as possible. In-person learning, as we know, is best for our children.
I assume if the FDA says it's safe for adults, it should be safe for children too. But as a parent, would you recommend this? Would you allow your boys to get it?
Well, actually, I wouldn't assume that just because something is safe for an adult is safe for a child. And in fact, there are a lot of medications that are not. And when we look at clinical trials for children, they have to take them very slow. They start with the older children with low doses, and they kind of work like this. They increase the dose as they slowly decrease the age to be very careful by making sure that it is safe for children. So we'll see, but time will tell, and we need to make sure they take it very slow in testing this in children.
So we don't even have the data yet to say it is safe for children, yet the superintendent in LA
We're nowhere near having the data yet. Nowhere near.
When will we have vaccines for kids? When will they be available?
So Pfizer and Moderna said end of 2022 that they'll have some data on it. I believe Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca are also working on some trials with children. But I do not see an FDA, either an EUA or approval for children anytime in the future, maybe towards the end of 2021, but I think closer towards 2022.
And I think parents will push back until we know more about the vaccine for children. This is great news. The U.S. cancer death rate has dropped more than ever. The numbers are in 2017 to 2018, the death rate dropped 2.4%. And then if you look at 1991 to 2018, it dropped 31%. This is great, especially for you in your field, because you help cancer patients recover or get treated.
That's right. Great news in the cancer front. We continue to see a decline in cancer mortality, largely due to lung cancer screening and decreased amount of cigarette smoking and tobacco use. However, Ainsley, I will tell you, still over 30 million Americans are smoking cigarettes, and that increases their risk of lung cancer specifically by 15 to 30%. So I implore everybody to continue living your healthiest life. The biggest thing that I find concerning out of the COVID-19 pandemic is the fact that people are not getting their cancer screenings, and we are having later stage cancers being diagnosed right now. So while these numbers are extremely encouraging, we have to keep up that momentum. We have to focus on early detection, early treatment, and living our best and healthiest lives.
Absolutely. Dr. Saphier, always good to see you. Thank you for being on with us.
Thank you, Ainsley.
You're welcome. Overnight, Google-owned YouTube suspends President Trump's official.
Less than a week to go before the president leaves and the new president's in. They're on a rocket impeachment, which I didn't think was possible. Jason Chaffetz is with us, and the former congressman. I'm going to put you back in the House for a second. If it was up to you to vote today, would you be with people like Liz Cheney, who's going to vote to impeach, or you'd be with like Andy Biggs, who's going to vote not to impeach and wants to get rid of Liz Cheney?
I would not vote to impeach the president. There is nothing in that resolution, which I have read, that they can point to where Donald Trump invoked violence. No doubt that it was a shameful day. I didn't like it. I was a little bit frustrated with the president, but it's not an impeachable offense. If they had a line in the speech from Donald Trump where he invoked violence and to break the law, they would have put it in there, but they didn't. And I think it's a dangerous precedent. I think it's not warranted, and it's not going to fix the problem. It's not going to solve things. It's going to further divide the country, and I just think it is wrong.
Well, you know, what's interesting is the Republican leadership is not telling the caucuses how to vote. I mean, on a big day like today, normally in all the other impeachments, you know, you've got people who said, okay, look, we've all got to stand together. This time they're going, we're not going to tell you how to vote. Mitch McConnell apparently is 50-50, and it sounds like Kevin McCarthy knows that something has to be done and has already floated the idea, hey, I got a bunch of Republicans who would sign up for censure.
Yeah, I think censure is where most people want to be. But remember, this is not how Nancy Pelosi operates. She's not there to actually solve the problem. She wants to divide the Republican Party. The Nancy Pelosi I know is all about Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party, and she wants to continue to further this fight. She's not doing things in this last week before the new president is sworn in that will actually unite the country. So when they say, oh, we want to unite the country, where's the evidence of that?
You know, what's interesting is YouTube has now suspended Trump's official channel. But if you look at Amazon and the top books right now, I think it's number 3 right now, Steve said, we just checked, the book 1984. It is written by George Orwell, same author as Animal Farm. And this is the description, one of the most celebrated classics of the 20th century. Orwell's cautionary tale of a man trapped under the gaze of an authoritarian state feels more relevant now than ever before. And it's about a man who tries to find some form of escape because he's desperate now because of this all-encompassing authoritarian government. What do you say?
You know, it's ironic to me that when Donald Trump took office, these were the types of things that the Democrats said that Donald Trump is going to do. Donald Trump didn't do any of those things that he was accused and he was foreshadowed to do. And yet now you see this transition of power coming, and you see these big tech companies taking on this teacher role that says, you know, trying to slap these students and saying, go sit in the corner. We don't want to ever hear from you. That is not the American way. Even foreign countries are recognizing that this is not the American way. I think it is fundamentally wrong. It is a suppression of our First Amendment rights. And people will argue, well, they're private companies, they can do what they want. But that is just not why Congress gave them this Section 230, ability to go out and put out these platforms to further our discussions, even though there's a lot of vitriol.
Did the government play a role in the construction of these sites, the clouds, and the internet?
Yes.
So they were there first,
yes,
they got the subsidies, and now they're trying to say they're private entities. Technically they are, but they were propped up and the foundation was laid, the cement was drawn out, and now that they want to turn around and say no one else is allowed in.
Yeah, the internet was actually created by, I believe, the Pentagon. It was the United States military that developed this system, and it moved forward. And again, Congress gave them special powers and exempted them from any sort of liability so that they could go out there and do this. I remember personally when Jack Dorsey came to Capitol Hill and met with me and pled that he needed more freedom to get out there and get Twitter out there. He was doing these types of things. We had Tim Cook, the head of Apple, have private dinners with myself and Devin Nunes pleading for us to make sure that they could get out there and do more and more. So every one of them is culpable of lobbying and going after Republicans and saying, hey, we need more of this. And then all of a sudden you turn around and now they're using it as a tool to bludgeon Republicans.
And
it
kiss
was
up to
so
Democrats.
dishonest and so wrong.
All right.
Yeah, it is so one way.
Meanwhile, coming up on, I'm going to circle my calendar, April 6th, you've got a brand new book out. It's called They Never Let a Crisis Go to Waste, The Truth About Disaster Liberalism. Now, is Rahm Emanuel going to be a co-author on this? Because he's famously said, never let a crisis go to waste.
When I was elected in 2008, I met with Rahm Emanuel as a freshman member, and then he made this comment. And you know what? Through my 8.5 years in Congress, it really illuminated the idea that Democrats will use a crisis to give government unlimited power. And so guess what? Government has figured out that they need an unlimited number of crises because that's how they get all the power. And rarely do the Democrats push for anything other than we need more power. So this book, I'm excited about it, comes out, and I appreciate you showing it.
Jason, one quick exit question. In the New York Post today, an op-ed person says that's what's going on right now with the big social media platforms. They're not letting a crisis go to waste. They're taking what happened last week and using it to punish Donald Trump.
They do it. They did it with COVID. There's a whole book chock full of examples of how Democrats have used and liberals have gone out and used a crisis as an excuse. More government, more spending, more control, less liberty, less freedom for Americans. That's exactly what's playing out in real time. It happened in 2020, and it's going to happen in the future. When you see this, when you see the book, it illuminates it, and once you see it, then you understand where the Democratic playbook is.
Okay, it comes out on April 6th, but you can pre-order it, I assume, on Amazon.
All right, we'll see you in April.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hopefully before, too. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
All right, let's hand it over to Janice Dean. She has forecast for us. Hey, JD.
Hi, let's take a look at it. Yeah, it's cold, but, not as cold as it's going to get as we head into next week. That's a tease because some of that cold air that has been trapped in Canada for many weeks is going to start to knock on our door. So this is our storm system that's moving in from the west, going to be quite a bit of snow for the upper Midwest, the northern plains, even the interior Northeast. So this is a pretty impressive storm system that's going to set up on Thursday and Friday. If you live across the upper Midwest, northern plains, you need to watch your forecast because we could get some measurable snow. And there's where that cold air is going to settle in starting next week. Over the next 2 weeks, the polar vortex is going to take over, and we'll start talking about some pattern changes in the weather department. Steve, Ainsley, Brian, back to you.
All right, something to look forward to. Pattern changes in the weather department. I appreciate it. Coming up straight ahead, we got Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, Congressman Greg Steube. We got Steve Forbes going to be here live, try to justify his magazine's new position when it comes to Republicans. Tommy Lahren and Rob Smith. Now we can make the music louder. Stare at this.